All right, we are back. Another looking for work session. I am Mike Roberts, founder of Creating Coding Careers and the San Diego Code School, and I'm here to help. I'll hang out for about an hour or so, maybe a little bit shorter than that if we don't get a lot of questions. But I would love to provide my experience, my feedback, and help shorten the length of time and the effort that it might take for you to get to where you want to go, which I'm assuming if you're listening to me is maybe somewhere in the world of software engineering, data engineering, data science, DevOps, something in that space. If that is what you're looking to do, please drop me a comment, a question, a suggestion about like this format, and more than happy to take a stab at providing you some feedback. I do this every week. So I do this on Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, and we go out live on the interwebs. It's hosted across a bunch of different platforms. So I try and do this on LinkedIn. I try and do this on just a bunch of different spots. And I am live on LinkedIn like that, to kind of just amplify the message that, hey, there are seniors that are willing to share some of our time and expertise and answer questions that you have. You don't have to go it alone. If you're either self-taught or you're thinking about a boot camp or you graduated from a boot camp and you're looking to land that first job, we're here to help. Talk to your local senior devs and say, this is what you're struggling with, and I need help with X, Y, or Z. I'm telling you, we're a great community of folks to lean on. At least the folks that I know a lot of decent engineers. A lot of folks in the San Diego JavaScript community. So I'm in the leadership, the board for San Diego JavaScript community. I'm involved with Blacks in Tech. So if you're a person that is feeling like there might be, some additional barriers or resistance, whether that be because of ageism or racism or sexism, then reach out and connect with folks that might be able to help you to sort of conquer some of those challenges that you have and land that first gig. So the easiest way for you to send a question is for you to just open up the chat box and leave a comment. If you leave a comment, then it will go right to me. So ask your questions in the chat box. We're on the Twitch and Periscope and YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. So any of those places, if you put a comment on this, even like a hi, hello, please drop it in there. It will make me feel like I'm not just shouting at my computer this morning and people are actually, feeling it. It's helpful. So if that's the case, feel free. Give me a thumbs up or like or subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would make me feel like, okay, this is helping folks. This is working. We're making moves. I know I help folks like in my day-to-day. So day-to-day, I run a Department of Labor approved registered apprenticeship program through my nonprofit, Creating Coding Careers. We help folks get paid to learn how to code and spend about 12 months as an apprentice becoming a entry-level software engineer and help them transition into working at amazing companies. So if you are a business owner and you need either software development services, or if you're in an ecosystem that we work in, like ServiceNow or Microsoft, like 365 Azure space, please feel free, reach out to me. I'd love to have our apprentices help you get to where you need to be in terms of digital enablement, etc. So I did get one question. I haven't gotten any yet today from people in the comment field, but I did get one question via email just a few days ago. So I'm going to open up my email and try and answer that one, which I was smart. I put a little star on it so I wouldn't lose it. So now I'm just going to go to my starred and we can find it easy. There we go. Questions for your next live stream. So this question came in from Lisa. Lisa, if you're out there, here's your answer. She writes that she is an early career developer with a question regarding passion projects. I'm having trouble finding an API that won't charge me for access to a project that I'd like to build. More specifically, data on fuel prices for private aircraft at different airports around the country. What are your thoughts on using a server, stub, or data that I create via JSON in order to get the project running? That is an awesome question, because I don't know any free sources of the prices for fuel at airports, but I am somewhat familiar with this topic because there was someone I was talking to at some point, and they were like providing me this amazing set of facts about how there are different fuel providers at the airports, and they kind of compete on pricing, right? And so you can actually decide, like, if you're someone that has a plane, let's just assume you got a big airliner, you can decide to sign a contract with like one gasoline provider or another. Be like, if you had like a choice between Shell and like, I don't know, like Exxon or Mobil, and you can literally like say, I don't want that, I want this, like Unical 76, right? So, or Sunoco if you're on the East Coast. So that said, sometimes you will be in a situation where you're not going to have the real API. And so the first thing I usually suggest people is exactly what you described, which is creating a stub, right? Which is a type of mock of your data. And so whenever, especially when we're coaching earlier career folks, whenever we say, hey, we'd like you to get the user interface set up, we don't want to rely on the back-end implementation of what the database looks like and have that block us moving forward. We want to make a reasonable attempt to find out what is the contract that we have with the back end, what is the shape of the data, what is it going to look like coming from the back end. And then I almost always will suggest creating that fixture that you described. So creating something in JSON, and I've described it as 3 different things. I've done that intentionally. You could call it a fixture, you could call it a mock, you could call it a stub. All of those 3 things are kind of synonymous in this case. It's a fixed amount of data, a fixture that you can then send back from the back end. So now your front end can make a request and pretend that your server is going to be making that request out to the real world and getting the data, and instead you just give it back some data that you've just hard coded. So that's an excellent idea. Now there are going to be some flaws and downsides to this. So the pro is like you get up and running and you're functioning. And you also have to deal with the asynchronous nature of the API call from the front end, right? So from the front end, you're not just mocking the data on the front end, because then you get an instant response, and it's kind of hard for you to tell what's the load time, what is this going to look like when I actually have a delay because I'm requesting information that has to come back. So make sure you mock your data on the back end. So you actually make a request from the browser to the back end. But then the flip side to it is someone will argue, well, you really want to make sure the data is absolutely coming in that format before you start sort of coding against it. And my suggestion would be that while that's a valid point, that sometimes you design something and then you have to change later because the data is actually shaped slightly differently, you could always do that in the logic on the server side in your controller, and you could always use your server as like an API gateway or a proxy for what the real data coming back looks like. And then you clean it up and you send it to the front end. So you're somewhat in control of that. You can kind of massage that. So I've never really liked that philosophy of like, let's wait until we're absolutely sure what the back end data is going to look like before we code the front end. I feel like you can get away with it, especially when you're trying to be lean and you're trying to be agile and you're trying to respond to the end users in the front end and tell them, okay, this is what we're designing. This is how we're going to be able to sort of see the different prices for the different gasoline and choose and bid and all that. And then later on, you can get the real data, right? Just make sure you got a reasonable attempt at getting it right in terms of what's going to be available to you, because you don't want to assume you have something that's available that's just not available. The data is just not there. If it's data that you need to, use some logic and there's a model, then you just want to make sure, can I actually create something that will generate the data that I need? If there is some sort of approach to it that's not super obvious. David asks if I'm in jail, and I'm not in jail. My shirt's actually not orange. It's just the camera, for whatever reason, is picking it up as orange. It's actually red, but I like orange. And orange is one of the colors of our nonprofit. It's blue is our primary color. Orange is the other color. So I'm not offended. I'm not in jail. I like that, though. Houston asks, okay, so he's a graduate of a software engineering cohort in New York. Slack channels regarding job searching. Can I elaborate? Sure. So I wouldn't want to critique your resume in real time unless you really wanted me to do that. So if that's what you want me to do, send me a link. I'm more than happy to critique it in real time and share feedback. But I'd be happy to provide you some feedback offline if that would be more appropriate. So yeah, so shoot me an email message, mike@sdcs.io, and I'd be more than happy to give you some feedback on your resume. In terms of Slack channels for job searching, again, what I try and do is it's not a direct. It's kind of like if you were trying to if you're dating, right? You don't run into the bar and as soon as you walk into the bar, you announce, "Hey, ladies, Mike's here. Anybody want to get married?" That's kind of what it feels like when you're an employer and someone bolts over to you and says, "I recently graduated. How do I get a job?" Right? It feels very like, whoa, settle down. Like, I don't even know you. Right? So start with, how do you build relationships with people that are software engineers, right? Because oftentimes opportunities are not published and posted. Oftentimes opportunities are going to be sort of known within the engineers within an organization, and they'll say, "Hey, we're looking to add another developer. Does anybody know anybody that has this skill?" So as a new developer, it's not likely that you're going to just be able to like go on Indeed every day or go on ZipRecruiter or go on one of these job boards and find someone that's saying, "I'd like to hire someone that has 0 to 6 months of experience or a recent college graduate, et cetera," and it fits exactly what your profile is. So instead, it's going to require a little bit more finesse. And I would say, start joining your local community Slack channels. So there are big Slack channels, like there are just JavaScript Slack channels where you can just, find a large JavaScript organization and get in there, but you'll be in with like tens of thousands of other developers, or a Google group where you're in with tens of thousands of other developers. And I think it'd be much more helpful for you to join a Slack group that's part of a local community. So you're in New York, you mentioned that. I don't know what part of New York you're in terms of boroughs, but there is one, Brooklyn GS, and Brooklyn's pretty well known for, at least for putting on some fancy looking flyers and meetups. So I'd reach out to them. It's the only one that I only meetup group that I know of that, like, all the way on the West Coast, we've kind of heard of them, Brooklyn JS. So you might want to reach out to them first, but you're in a pretty dense city. And so there should be plenty of other people that you can network and connect with. Start there, though. Start with like an ecosystem that's close to you geographically, because then you can find people you can really connect with in real life once the COVID situation is over. The next is start looking for organizations, Slack channels around technology that you're interested in. So a technology that you might be interested in might include something like maybe you're into DevOps, and so you might connect with Rancher, right? And join the Rancher community. And now you'll be in a room with subject matter experts that are really deeply involved and have a deep amount of knowledge in that space. Or you might join like a community that's around what probably wouldn't be a competitor. So probably not a lot of Google channels on Slack. But each community is going to have their own sort of like niche. So for Google, there might be Google groups, right? Or Google communities. Start there. Start with something that's interesting to you. Depends on what kind of software that you're writing, right? So if you're looking for web development, then you might want to look at what are some common web development frameworks and platforms people like. So join a local React group, or join a local Wix or WordPress, or any of the things that you might be actually interested in doing. All right, I'm going to pause there for just a sec. Any other questions? I feel like there's got to be more questions, but there's a little bit of a delay. So I know as soon as I stop, then people are like, "Oh," and they start typing, and then it takes a little while for me to see the message. So I should give people like a preemptive warning. Start getting your questions ready, because I'm going to stop talking in T-minus 3, 2, 1. I appreciate the fact that David thought that in jail I would have a mini fridge stocked with limitless LaCroix. So I mean, the books make sense, right? Because if I was in jail, I'd probably have a lot of books because they probably wouldn't want me on the computer. But Limitless LaCroix in my cell? Probably not. Yes. Brooklyn Tech Triangle. Shout out to those folks. I mean, there's big national organizations too. So you got Blacks in Tech, you've got Dev Color. There's a lot of organizations of people that look like you that have been in your shoes before and would be more than happy to help you just sort of like narrow in on what's the best way to get your foot in the door. So what else? All right, I'm going to close my door because I'm hearing some noise. Any other questions? This is going to be a short one. I'm gonna do lunch. Guess what we're having for lunch today? Rotisserie chicken. Rotisserie chicken. Oh, LinkedIn user. All right. That's a good question. This is a good one. As a self-taught full stack developer, should I include all the technologies I'm good at, or should I target a specific role? All right. Depends. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you, if you have a lot of different technologies that you feel comfortable with, the key is going to be whether or not you say you're good. So if it's good, you're comfortable, then sure, list them. But I would try and make sure you're sort of narrowing what kind of thing you're looking, what kind of role you're looking for. And if they're very different, then you might actually want to de-emphasize some and emphasize others and have two different versions of your resume, or three different versions, so however many you think, if they're in like clusters. So let's say you've got like some experience with like LAMP stack, and then you also have some experience with like C#. Very different, right? So one's like web development, the other's more enterprisey. So you might want to like emphasize one on one resume and the other on the other, and then kind of go after two different types of job roles. All right. And so cater your resume always towards specific roles, and then working backwards from there. You should be looking at trying to narrow down your specific roles so that you're not taking the sort of the shotgun approach of like, I'll take a job anywhere. I'm really good at a bunch of different things. It's not a good look for hiring managers. They want to know that you have some general experience and then you have deep knowledge. They sometimes have a hard time figuring out where your deep knowledge is if the tech is just all over the place. So I would try and say, in both cases, if you use those two technology stacks that I just mentioned, like C# on one side and like Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP on the other side, so LAMP. So if you have that in your background, then I would say, okay, across both of them, you're good with web development, and one of them may be more of like back end, and one of them may be more like full stack, even though it's back end. PHP is, I'm assuming, doing some web work with that. So it varies. That's the true question, or that's the true answer. I would say you do want to include the technologies. I'd say you want to maybe have different versions of your resume and then highlight more of them in some. The other is that when people say you're good at something, but then they also will comment often that, but I don't like PHP. Right? And they're like, I just don't want to do any more PHP work. I've done WordPress, or I've done plugins and themes, and I don't want to do any more PHP. Then don't put it on your resume. Because if you put it on your resume, it's going to pique the interest of people that want to offer you positions because they think you're a good fit. But if you don't want to do it, don't put it on your resume. Then you want to have to be bothered by those folks because it's kind of annoying. Any other questions? I like that one. I think Oscar, that was yours. So good question, Oscar. I need to have like a little clock or something so that people can tell when I'm getting close to the end of my answer. So then there's like, whoop, the next question comes in. Takes a little while to get us going, but once we get going, whew, Man, second half, it's a beast. What else? And you can send me questions. You can send them to me via email, mike@sdcs.io. So it's mike@sdcs.io. I also have a new email address for our nonprofit. I'm pretty excited about that. It is mike@cccareers.org for creatingcodingcareers.org. But creating coding is really long, so you thought, I want to make it a little shorter. Let me see if I can change that on the page in real time. That would be pretty dope. I don't know if I can, though. Don't think it's possible. Yeah. It's a distraction. Sorry. Last thing anyone wants to see is me looking in circles around my monitor. Yeah. I can't see a quick way to change it. I can turn my name off if that's distracting. What else? What other questions do you have? I feel like this is a quiet group today. Quiet group. There's our color. Blue and orange. All right. If we don't have any other questions, we are about to bail. Oh, I got questions. See? All I have to do is say that word. If I say the lunchtime word, everybody's like, wait. You got work to do, buddy. Riverside. Interested in your apprenticeship. Sent my info to the website. Do you get a lot of companies in the Riverside area? No, not necessarily, but that's not a huge deal. We have companies all over. A lot of companies are looking for folks that are able to work on distributed teams. So remote work is super popular these days. With COVID, I think a lot of engineering shops realized that they could get quality talent as well as be people being productive working from home. There was sometimes a resistance to that prior to COVID because people were like, well, if everybody's working from home, they're not going to get stuff done. And I think there could be some fall off. There is definitely a better ability for you to collaborate in an office environment where you can just walk right over and ask someone a question than the delay sometimes there is in like getting someone's attention when you're not in the same room. But there is the other side. The other side is, man, you have the privacy and the quietness of not being distracted. And for a lot of the tasks that we do as software engineers, it's really helpful to be able to have focus and have people not distracting you. So yeah, to me, I think we're going to continue to see growth. Whether or not there'll be companies specifically in Riverside, don't know. But doesn't mean that you can't do well in our apprenticeship program. Riverside's not too far. We've had people drive down from Inland Empire before, so there's a chance, is what I'm saying. There's a chance. I've been talking with business leaders in that community in Riverside about having a program up there, so it is not entirely off the table that would be a place that would be interested in moving into. But it's not necessarily because there's companies there. It's more to support the people that live in Riverside and finding them good, well-paying jobs. So hopefully that helps. Laurel asks, what are my top 3 favorite tech podcasts aside from Cycles for getting more familiar? Oh, that's a good question. The answer, I don't know if it's going to be too helpful. I don't listen to a lot of tech podcasts in general. So I'm not a huge consumer of podcasts. I used to tell people I listen to every podcast that I'm on. And now that I produce the Snack Balls podcast, season 1 is out and available. We had 70 plus episodes. I'm more into it, but I literally don't listen to many at all. So the one I'll give you is Chasing Squirrels, because my colleague Jeff Winkler runs a website called Golden Squirrel, and it's a place for more experienced developers. Not really a place for beginners. There's not a lot there for beginners. I'll say that. You can go there as a beginner, but mainly the opportunities are for more experienced developers. It's like a place to sort of reinvent the way that the job search and interview process works. So if you're a little newer, there may be other opportunities for you to engage on that platform. But for people that are a little bit more experienced, there could be great opportunities for them to find like dream companies to work for. And Jeff started a podcast where he talks to CTOs about what they're looking for and what kinds of benefits there are working at those organizations. So I would, just out of curiosity and like trying to envision what it will be like when you're on the job, check out Chasing Squirrels. I think it's good. Chasing Squirrels. And it's on all of the different podcast platforms. There was another one, I think it's called like Developer T. Let me double check, but I think Developer T was another one that I listened to a few episodes of it when I was like driving one time. I thought, wow, this is pretty nice. I think that's it. Yeah. Developer T. I like that one too. It's pretty good. So those are my two. I can't get you three because I don't listen to that many. I'm sorry. John asks, what further steps are needed to speak with you or your team about opportunities? Okay, so you can reach out to me via email. That's usually the easiest way to get in touch with me directly, mike@sdcs.io. If it's about the apprenticeship, just understand that I get like bombarded with people asking me like, how do I get into the apprenticeship? When does it start? So I would encourage you to go to the website and check out the frequently asked questions page, because you can actually get answers faster than I can book a time to chat with you. And it may be enough answers for you to be able to resolve like, okay, is this something I'm really interested in? And then what should I be doing while I'm like waiting to hear back? That's probably like your safest bet. But feel free to shoot me an email. Just don't be offended if like that's the first thing I do is tell you, okay, we'll check this out, and then ask me specific questions. You have specific questions afterwards. Unfortunately, if I met with everyone that had questions about the apprenticeship program, I would literally spend all day, every day talking to folks about the apprenticeship and how amazing it is. But I then wouldn't be able to connect with employers and connect with like funders and other folks that I need to connect with as an executive director of the nonprofit to actually help us continue to grow the program. So we do have a good number of clients that I'm responsible for making sure we serve. So it's not that I'm disinterested. It's just literally I have very little bandwidth outside of this hour. This hour, I do this every week. And so I love being able to take this time, block it off, and know this is just focused on helping people, not just our students, like anybody. If you're looking for work and you're looking for a job in tech, this is where you should be asking your questions, because I'm going to give you the best attempt I have. It's based on the sample size that I have. And that's one thing that's really important. I share this with students when we used to onboard them into our boot camp. Your perception is very different than what my perception is, because you have a sample size of one in terms of the number of people that you have taught how to code. You've taught yourself if you're self-taught, right? Or if you've gone through a school or whatever, you've got one under your belt. I've taught hundreds of students. And more importantly, I've seen the ones that did not successfully get jobs, and I've seen the one that successfully get jobs, and I've seen what they do. So rather than you having to like reinvent the wheel, it's like, just do the things I'm suggesting for you to do, and you're going to be fine. You'll get a job right away. If you don't, you'll be just like everybody else that struggled. It will take you a long time, and it'll be super painful. So it's up to you. It's free advice. You can take it if you want. It's like all I can do is make the suggestion and say, try it out. I've seen it work a lot. Pause. People are thinking about questions. I know they're coming. So if you have questions, easiest way to get them to me is to drop them in the chat. It comes directly to me. Or you can send me an email, mike@sdcs.io, or mike@cccareers.org. I got to get used to using that. cccareers.org. Feels good. I like having that. Not just the email, but like the nonprofit. It's pretty good. It's pretty fun. It's good stuff. What else? If you got a question, Shoot over. Don't be shy. Now is the time to get that question answered. Man, I cannot figure out how to change my name. Oh, I just found it. There you go. That's the new email address. We're still working on a refresh of the website too. So. And I assume, John, that you are a student looking for work. If you're a company looking for work, same thing. Shoot me an email message. More than happy to explain to you how it works for companies. I just assume everybody here is looking for work, but maybe your employer looking for software engineers. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I'm going to lunch it up. Lunching it up, boss. Is there anybody out there? I feel like it's like so quiet. I should play music or something in the background. Would music be helpful or would that be distracting? That is the question. We could throw some music in there and it would, yeah, music would definitely liven things up a little bit. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to see if we can get a little background music. Just don't ask me to play it. I took up learning the drums during COVID. I'm decent. I'm not pro yet, but maybe I could have a career as a professional drummer. Working on it. Okay. Hearing none, if I don't get any of the questions in the next like 30 seconds or so, I'm gonna peace out. We'll do this again next week. If you are currently looking, don't be shy. Come back, ask your question. The more transparent you can be about the things that you're struggling with or need help with, the easier it is for me to give you direct feedback and help. If you'd prefer to send me a question privately for feedback, just shoot me an email. And then I'd love to be able to, if you can think of a question later, we can cover those next time that we do this next week, every Tuesday, 12 o'clock Pacific. I'll use that time to address questions, unless you specifically say, hey, this is just something that can you just send me an email response to. So I'd love to be able to share your questions with everybody because I think the answers are helpful for a lot of folks that are dealing with very similar challenges. Most of these are things that I've heard or seen developers struggle with like many times over. Because a lot of this process is not intuitive, right? It is not intuitive to be like, wait, so you mean I'm not just supposed to go to the job boards and just keep applying for jobs? No, that's not how this works. This isn't like the kind of job interview where you're going to show up and because you wore a shirt and tie, they're going to take you seriously. And then at the end of the interview, they're going to ask you when you can start. It's not going to happen. Even as easy it is for a senior engineer, it doesn't have that way for senior engineers either. For a senior engineer, it might be like the last job I quote unquote interviewed for. I think I met with a CTO maybe one time for lunch. And then I met with the CEO and the lead technical developer for, I want to say, dinner. And that was it. They made me a job offer during dinner. So but it wasn't just that one, right? It was like two conversations. So even as a senior engineer, it would be way, way easier. And it may be like lunch. They might ask you, hey, come fly a desk in our office, come work out of our office for a day, and let's get a chance to get to know you. But it's not likely that it's going to be a situation where you're going to go to a formal interview, you're going to show up, they're going to ask you some questions, and they're going to be like, all right, when can you start? It usually is like a multiple step process, and it's totally doable but it's just not like most other hiring processes at most companies for non-leadership roles. It mirrors kind of like what you're looking for typically in leadership when you're interviewing for folks. So someone on the YouTubes asks, how realistic is it for a bootcamp graduate to move up in the tech industry? For example, becoming lead engineer. Oh man. So the perception from a lot of folks is like, oh man, like bootcamp students they're not experienced enough, or they're missing CS3 fundamentals. Here's the truth. Those that do the work after the bootcamp and get a job, right? And get a job in tech, because it's not easy, but let's say you get finished with bootcamp, you get a job in tech. In 2 years, typically, they're in the role where they're either helping to recruit or they're the hiring manager, where they're the ones that are making the recommendation on how to expand the team. And so very quickly after that, they could be in much higher positions. I know someone, I'm not going to use his name, I'll just use his age. He started at 18 at the first code school I went to work for. And then at 18, I was like, man, this kid's not very mature. And he wasn't. He was just, he's younger than most of the other students that were career changers. So at 18, he started, he went through the boot camp. He landed a job at a small tech company. They do like cybersecurity. He spent a little while there, and he spent a little while somewhere else. And it's literally been 4 years, and he is a CIO, Chief Information Officer. And not like it's some like 2-person startup where his buddy's the CEO and he's the CIO. This is a legit company, and this legit company has someone that's like 23 as their CIO. So they answer your question with just 2 short examples, or one. It is very common that the students that make it through a boot camp and then successfully go on and work and find jobs and spend time on their craft become members of the engineering leadership team, for sure. And the nice part about it is they're usually much more progressive and open about hiring other people based on their skill and not pedigree. So they are really good at evaluating like, okay, these are the things that are important in our company to the types of work that we do. We look for teamwork and collaboration, and we look for these technical skills. They need to be able to solve algorithms, or they need to be able to implement things on Azure. These are the things we're looking for, and they do a really good job of cutting through all of the noise and identifying, oh, like I know the attributes that person has demonstrated during an interview are going to work well here. So I would say they make really good, high impact leaders inside of those organizations. And it's really common. And if you want proof, the easiest thing to do is look at a program like Dev Bootcamp. Dev Bootcamp has not been around for a while. So if you Google, or if you look for people in profiles that went to Dev Bootcamp, so Dev Bootcamp graduates, if you just search and see where Dev Bootcamp graduates are, because they're all now at least 4 years out, because the program's been closed for like 4 years now, 5 years now, something like that. So no one could have recently graduated from Dev Bootcamp, is what I'm saying. So if you graduated from Dev Bootcamp, it was at least 4 or 5 years ago. Look and see where the titles are of those people. I know someone that's going to do a piece about this, and she's going to basically highlight women that went to Dev Bootcamp that are now in leadership positions. And I can tell you countless stories of people that have definitely moved up and become not just lead engineer, but have become like hiring managers and on a leadership path. And then there's, countless others that are on the principal software engineer path. So they've already been senior engineers. They're now looking at like distinguished or principal, or senior principal, senior distinguished principal, whatever you want to call those additional paths. So both sides, you can really go really far. Now, like anything, there are good code schools and there are bad code schools. There are good and bad students that go to good and bad code schools. So I don't know what that little matrix is of those things, but I can just tell you it's really more about the person than it is about like the pedigree. There's tons of resources out there. So for people that are looking to become self-taught, or people that are looking for a more accelerated path through either boot camp or an apprenticeship program, there's lots of different ways that you can get the skills that you need to be successful. And I define success as getting a job. Any other questions? That, by the way, was my favorite one. So I hope you become a subscriber and you ask lots of questions because that was good. All right. Hearing none, I am going to end for this week. I will be back. Do this again next week. If you have a question in between, shoot me a message, mike@cccareers.org. That's my new email for my new nonprofit. And yeah, I'm more than happy to continue to do this until everybody that wants a job knows how to get one. I can't do the interview for you, but I can at least try to sort of cut through some of the noise and provide suggestions as to things that I've seen work and things that I've seen not work. And so you don't want to do as many of those. Later.